The year was 2847, and deep in the cold darkness of space, an old ship moved slowly through the stars. The Earth defense vessel Relentless was her name, and she had been flying for nearly 200 years. Her hull was covered with scars from battles long forgotten. Patches of different colored metal showed where repairs had been made over the decades. She was not beautiful, but she was strong in a way that newer ships could never understand. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge with his hands resting on a console that had served many officers before him. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and deep lines on his face that told stories of a life spent among the stars. His uniform was clean but worn, just like his ship. The Navy had forgotten about him years ago, and he had made peace with that fact. His crew numbered 47 souls, and every single one of them had been forgotten just like their commander. They were the ones who did not fit into the modern Navy. They were too old, too stubborn, or too honest for the politicians who ran things back on Earth. But Daniel loved every one of them because they were real sailors who understood what it meant to serve. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos was his second in command. She was a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. The Navy had passed her over for promotion 6 times because she refused to smile at admirals and laugh at their jokes. She had requested transfer to the Relentless because she wanted to serve on a ship where skills mattered more than politics. Chief Engineer worked down in the engine room where he had spent the last 30 years of his life. He was a big man with thick hands that were always covered in grease. He knew the Relentless better than anyone alive. He could tell what was wrong with her just by listening to the sound of her engines. When younger engineers said the ship should be scrapped, would just smile and shake his head. The old girl still had plenty of fight left in her. Communications Officer Lisa Morgan was the youngest member of the crew at 28 years old. She had requested this assignment because her mother was sick on a nearby colony, and the Relentless patrolled close enough for her to visit when they had leave. She was quiet and kind, and the older crew members had adopted her like a daughter. The ship was on what High Command called a retirement patrol. This meant they were sent to a quiet corner of space where nothing ever happened. It was the Navy's way of telling them they were no longer important. The Relentless was scheduled to be taken apart in 3 months, and her crew would be scattered to desk jobs where they could not cause any trouble. Daniel did not mind the quiet patrol. He had stopped caring about glory and promotions long ago. He just wanted to do his job and take care of his people. If the Navy wanted to forget about him, that was fine. He would keep flying until they made him stop. The bridge was quiet that morning, with only the soft hum of the old computers breaking the silence. The stars outside the moved slowly past as the ship continued her patrol route. Everything was normal and peaceful, the kind of day that made sailors relax and let their guard down. Then Lisa sat up straight at her station, her eyes going wide as she stared at her screen. "Commander," she said, and there was something in her voice that made everyone on the bridge turn to look at her. "I am picking up a distress signal. It is coming from the Harmony colony on 7." Daniel felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Harmony was a small farming colony of about 12,000 people. Families lived there, people who had wanted a quiet life away from the crowded cities of Earth. There were children on that colony, and schools, and all the normal things that made a community. "What is the nature of the distress?" he asked, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was beating faster. Lisa worked her console, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Her face went pale as she read the decoded message, and Daniel knew before she spoke that the news was bad. "Sir, they are reporting contact with unknown vessels." She paused and swallowed hard. "Hostile contact. The message says they are being invaded." The bridge fell completely silent. In over 400 years of human expansion into the galaxy, they had never met intelligent alien life. Scientists had talked about the possibility. The military had made plans just in case. But as the years passed and the stars remained empty, most people had decided that humanity was alone in the universe. Now those people were wrong, and the proof was attacking a colony full of innocent civilians. "Set a course for 7, Daniel ordered. His voice was steady and strong, even though fear was growing inside him. "Maximum speed." Maria looked at him with concern in her eyes. "Sir, we do not know what we are flying into. Should we not contact High Command first and wait for reinforcements?" "Those people do not have time for us to wait," Daniel replied. "Every minute we spend talking to admirals is a minute those colonists spend dying." From the engine room, his voice came through the intercom. "Commander, maximum speed in this old girl is going to shake loose half our hull plating. She was not built to run this hard anymore." "Then shake it loose. Those people need us, and we are the only ship close enough to help." There was a moment of silence, and then his voice came back with something that sounded almost like excitement. "Understood, Commander. I will give you everything she has got." The Relentless groaned as her old engines came to life with power they had not produced in years. The deck vibrated beneath Daniel's feet, and somewhere deep in the ship, metal creaked and complained. But the old vessel responded to the call, pushing herself faster than she had gone in decades. Daniel sat down in his command chair, the worn leather creaking beneath him. He looked around at his crew, at these forgotten men and women who had been thrown away by a navy that no longer valued them. They looked back at him with trust in their eyes, ready to follow him into whatever waited at 7. He did not know what they would find when they arrived. He did not know if they could make any difference against enemies with unknown weapons and unknown numbers. He did not even know if his old ship could survive the journey at this speed. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Running away had never been an option for him, and it never would be. When people needed help, you helped them. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to wear the uniform. The stars stretched into lines as the Relentless jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward a battle that would change everything humanity knew about its place in the universe. And on her bridge, a forgotten commander prepared to remind the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated. The Relentless dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the 7 system, and the bridge crew stared at their sensor displays in horrified silence. What they saw was worse than anything they had imagined during the long journey. 12 alien vessels hung in orbit around the colony world. They were unlike any ships humanity had ever built. Their hulls were sleek and angular, covered in a strange metallic surface that seemed to glow with inner light. Each ship was easily twice the size of the Relentless, and the energy readings coming from them were beyond anything in the human database. Daniel stood from his chair and walked closer to his eyes fixed on the alien fleet. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like predators that had evolved to be perfect killers. Everything about their design spoke of a civilization far more advanced than humanity. On the planet below, fires burned across the surface. 3 of the major settlements were in flames, orange dots of destruction visible even from orbit. The colony's small defense force had already been destroyed. 2 patrol boats and a converted cargo ship had tried to protect their people, and now they were nothing but expanding clouds of debris drifting in the void. "We are being scanned," Maria reported from her station. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Their technology is incredible, Commander. Their power output alone is beyond anything we have ever seen. One of those ships could probably destroy our entire fleet." Daniel watched as several of the alien vessels began to turn, their attention shifting from the planet to the new arrival. He could almost feel their curiosity, their amusement at this small and primitive ship that had wandered into their hunting ground. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies, let us see if we can talk to them." Lisa worked her console with trembling fingers. "Channel open, sir." Daniel straightened his uniform and spoke clearly into the communication system. "This is Commander Daniel Hayes of the Earth Defense Vessel Relentless. You have attacked a civilian population under the protection of the United Earth government. Cease hostilities immediately and withdraw from this system." For a long moment there was only silence. The alien ships continued to watch them, making no move to attack or retreat. Then the main flickered, and an alien face appeared. Daniel had wondered many times what alien life might look like if humanity ever found it. The reality was both familiar and deeply disturbing. The creature was roughly humanoid in shape, with gray skin pulled tight over angular bones. But its face had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and they blinked one after another as it studied the humans on the Relentless. When it spoke, the words came through a translation program that struggled to keep up with the alien language. The voice was cold and filled with contempt. "You speak for the species that infests this world?" the alien asked. "I speak for humanity," Daniel replied, keeping his voice firm. "And I am ordering you to stand down and leave this system." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. It was an ugly sound, full of mockery and superiority. "Your vessel is primitive," the alien said. "Your weapons are toys. We are the Dominion and we have claimed this world for harvesting. Leave now and we will permit you to survive. You may serve as a curiosity, a reminder of what lesser species look like before they are collected." Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "And if we do not leave, then you will be destroyed and your species will learn its first lesson in obedience. We have conquered 1,000 worlds and harvested 100 species. You are nothing special. You are simply the next meal." The channel closed and the alien face disappeared from the screen. The bridge was silent as the crew processed what they had just heard. These creatures did not see humans as equals or even as enemies. They saw them as food. Maria stepped closer to Daniel, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Commander, we cannot fight them. We do not have the weapons, the shields, or the speed. Our ship is 200 years old and theirs are centuries ahead of us. The smart decision is to retreat and warn Earth about what we have found." "And leave 12,000 people to be harvested?" Daniel asked quietly. "If we stay, we die, and Earth does not get warned at all. Those people down there are already lost. We can save billions by bringing this information home." Daniel understood her logic. Maria was right about the numbers. 1 ship and 47 lives against 12,000 was a reasonable trade to protect all of humanity. Any admiral back on Earth would agree with her assessment. But Daniel was not an admiral, and he had never cared about reasonable trades. He turned to Lisa. "Send a compressed data burst to Earth. Everything we have recorded about these aliens. Their ship designs, their weapons signatures, their energy readings, everything. Use maximum encryption and send it on all available channels." "Yes, sir," Lisa replied, already working her console. Maria looked at him with sudden understanding. "You are going to stay and fight." "Earth will be warned no matter what we do next," Daniel said. "The question now is what kind of message we want to send to these." He turned to face the entire bridge crew. They were watching him with fear in their eyes, but also with something else, something that looked like hope. "They think we are primitive," Daniel continued. "They think we are weak. They think one old ship full of forgotten soldiers is not worth their attention. They have conquered 1,000 worlds and never met anyone who could stop them." He walked back to his command chair and sat down, his hands gripping the armrests. "I think it is time we taught them what humanity does when someone threatens our people. I think it is time we showed them that being old does not mean being helpless. And I think it is time these learned that humans do not run from a fight." He pressed the button for the ship-wide intercom. "All hands, this is the commander. Battle stations. We are going to war." Throughout the Relentless, alarms began to sound. Crew members ran to their posts, checking weapons and shields that had not been tested in real combat for years. In the engine room, began pushing the old reactor harder than he had ever dared before. The alien fleet waited. They had not moved to attack, probably still amused by this tiny ship that refused to flee. They would learn soon enough that amusement was a mistake. Daniel Hayes looked at the enemy and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with death and decided to make it count for something. "Helm," he said quietly, "take us in." The Relentless surged forward, her ancient engine screaming in protest as pushed them beyond every safety limit ever written. The old ship shook and groaned, but she answered the call of her crew and flew toward the enemy with all the speed she could find. The fleet responded with what could only be described as amusement. Two of their smaller vessels broke away from the main formation to intercept the human ship. Their movements were casual and relaxed, like predators playing with prey that was too stupid to run away. On the bridge of the Relentless, Maria watched the enemy approach on her tactical display. "Two alien ships closing on us, Commander. They are charging weapons. I think they see this as a game." Daniel nodded slowly. That was exactly what he wanted. Overconfident enemies made mistakes, and mistakes could be exploited. "Evasive pattern Delta," he ordered, "and prepare to fire everything we have." The helmsman, a veteran sailor named Price, put his hands on the controls and began to fly. The Relentless rolled and dove through space, her maneuvering thrusters firing in patterns that would have been impossible for a newer ship. Modern vessels relied on computers to fly them, but the Relentless was old enough that she still responded to human hands. The first energy beams cut through space, bright lines of destruction that could have vaporized the Relentless in a single hit. But they struck empty space where the ship had been a moment before, had moved her just in time, guided by instincts that no computer could match. "They are fast," said through gritted teeth, "but their targeting systems expect logical movements. They do not know how to predict crazy." "Then be crazy," Daniel replied. "Keep them guessing." The alien ships adjusted their approach, clearly surprised that their prey was harder to hit than expected. They increased their speed and spread apart, trying to catch the human vessel in a crossfire. "Return fire," Daniel commanded. The Relentless had been built in an era when space combat was brutal and close. Her weapons were not elegant or sophisticated. They were that fired chunks of tungsten at incredible speeds, missiles packed with enough explosive to crack asteroids, and energy cannons that had been designed to punch through heavy armor. The thundered, sending projectiles screaming toward the enemy at a fraction of light speed. The shields flickered and held, but the impacts were enough to make their ships stumble. For just a moment, the aliens had to focus on defense instead of attack. In the engine room was performing miracles. He had rerouted power from empty decks where no one lived anymore. He had taken energy from recreational facilities and storage bays and anywhere else he could find it. The Relentless was burning herself up from the inside, but her weapons fired faster than they had in decades. "They are getting angry," Maria observed. "The two ships are coordinating now. They are taking us seriously." "Good," Daniel said. "Open a channel. I want them to hear me." Lisa opened the communication frequencies, broadcasting on human channels and channels alike. Daniel stood from his chair and spoke in a voice that carried across the void of space. "This is Commander Hayes to all vessels. You have made a serious error today. You looked at our ship and saw something old and weak. You looked at our crew and saw prey waiting to be collected. But you forgot to ask yourselves an important question." The Relentless shuddered as a glancing blow scorched her hull, but Daniel continued speaking. "Why is this ship still flying after 200 years? Why are these humans still fighting when any logical species would have run away? The answer is simple. Humans do not run. Humans do not surrender. And humans never forget when someone hurts our people." He paused as another blast rocked the ship. "You want this planet. You will have to go through us. And I promise you, by the time we are finished, you will remember the name Relentless for the rest of your very short lives." He cut the transmission and turned to Maria. "Execute attack pattern Omega." Maria's face went pale. "Commander, that pattern was designed for ships that do not expect to survive. It is a suicide run." "I know exactly what it is designed for. Execute the pattern." The Relentless dove straight toward the two interceptors, abandoning all pretense of evasion. Her weapons blazed continuously, pouring fire at both enemy ships. The alien vessels scattered in opposite directions, momentarily confused by prey that was attacking instead of fleeing. In that moment of confusion, the Relentless slipped between them. Her close-range weapons opened fire at point-blank distance, hammering the alien shields with everything she had. One of the ships staggered as its shields began to fail under the sustained assault. "Targeting their engines," Maria reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Fire everything," Daniel ordered. The main cannon of the Relentless was a relic from another age. It was massive and slow to charge, designed for an era when ships fought at distances close enough to see each other with the naked eye. No modern navy used such weapons anymore. But they had never faced a weapon like it. The cannon spoke with a voice of thunder, sending a concentrated beam of energy into the exposed hull of the alien ship. For one glorious moment, the advanced metal of the vessel burned. Explosions rippled across its surface as internal systems failed. The ship listed to one side, its engines flickering and dying. On the bridge of the command vessel, the alien commander watched in disbelief. One of his ships was crippled, taken out of the fight by a primitive vessel that should have been destroyed in the first seconds of combat. The humans had drawn blood. "Sir," the second ship commander reported over their communication system, "the human vessel is damaged but still fighting. Their tactics are unpredictable. They do not fly like any species we have encountered before." The commander felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: doubt. "Destroy them," he ordered. "All ships converge on the human vessel. I want it torn apart." But as his fleet began to move, he could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The humans should have been easy prey. Instead, they had fought back with a ferocity that all logic. And on the burning deck of the Relentless, Commander Daniel Hayes watched the alien reinforcements approaching and smiled. They had hurt the enemy. They had proven that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Now they just had to survive long enough to do it again. The battle had been raging for over an hour, and the Relentless was dying. Her hull was breached in 7 different places. Emergency flickered in the gaps, holding back the vacuum of space with technology that was never meant to run this long. Smoke filled the corridors from fires that the damage control teams could not contain. The smell of burning metal and melting plastic hung in the air. 30% of the crew was dead or wounded. The medical bay was overflowing with injured sailors, and the ship's doctor worked without rest to save as many as he could. In the hallways, crew members stepped over debris and bodies as they ran to their stations, refusing to stop fighting even as their ship fell apart around them. But they were not unscathed. 3 of their vessels drifted dead in space, their hulls torn open by weapons they had never expected to face. One of them was a large warship that had made the mistake of getting too close to the Relentless. The old human ship had fought with a ferocity that all tactical logic, refusing to die, refusing to retreat. Commander Daniel Hayes sat in his command chair with blood running down his forehead from a gash he had received when an explosion threw him across the bridge. His ribs ached with every breath, probably cracked from the impact. But he refused to leave his post, refused to show weakness in front of his crew. Around him, his surviving officers worked with grim determination. They coaxed every last bit of performance from systems that were failing. They patched holes in the ship's defenses that should have been fatal. They kept fighting because their commander kept fighting, and they would not let him down. "Status report," Daniel rasped, his voice rough from smoke and exhaustion. Maria stood at her station with her left arm hanging useless at her side. A piece of shrapnel had torn through her shoulder early in the battle, but she had refused treatment until the fighting was over. Her face was pale from blood loss, but her eyes were clear and focused. "Main weapons are offline," she reported. "We have partial maneuvering only. Shields failed 20 minutes ago. Life support is failing on decks 3 through 7. We have sealed those sections." "And the colony?" Maria checked her readings and a small smile crossed her face. "The bombardment has stopped. They have pulled all their ships back from the planet to deal with us. The colonists are safe for now." Daniel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Every second the aliens spent trying to destroy the Relentless was a second they were not slaughtering civilians. Every shot they fired at his ship was a shot they did not fire at women and children. "Sir," Lisa called out from her station. Her voice was cracking from stress and fear, but she stayed at her post. "I am receiving a transmission from the surface. It is the colony administrator." "Put it through." The flickered and a woman's face appeared. She looked exhausted and terrified, with dirt and tears streaking her cheeks. Behind her, Daniel could see civilians huddled together in what appeared to be an underground shelter. Children clung to their parents. Old people sat with blank expressions, trying to understand how their peaceful world had become a war zone. "Commander Hayes," the woman said, "I am administrator of Harmony Colony. We have been watching your battle on our sensors. What you have done, I do not have words to describe it." "Are your people safe?" Daniel asked. "For now, yes. The aliens stopped attacking us when you engaged their fleet. You have given us time," paused and struggled to control her emotions. "The evacuation ships are almost loaded. Another hour and we can get most of our people off this world." "Then we will give you that hour." His eyes widened. "Commander, your ship is falling apart. We can see the damage from here. You cannot possibly survive another hour against that fleet. You have done enough. Please save yourselves." Daniel looked around his bridge at the men and women who had served beside him through years of neglect and dismissal. They looked back at him with eyes that held no fear, only resolve. They knew what he was going to say, and they were ready for it. "Administrator, let me tell you something about this crew. High Command called us the Forgotten Ones. They gave us the oldest ship in the fleet and sent us to the quietest corner of the galaxy. They thought we were finished, useless, ready for retirement." He stood from his chair, ignoring the pain in his ribs. "But they forgot something important. The people who crew old ships, who stay when everyone else moves on to newer things, are the people who understand what really matters. It is not about technology or weapons or shields. It is about the willingness to stand when standing seems impossible." He turned back to face the "Get your people out, administrator. We will hold the line." His eyes filled with tears. "I will never forget this. None of us will ever forget what you have done." The transmission ended, and Daniel faced his crew one last time. "You heard me make a promise. Anyone who wants to take an escape pod, now is your chance. No shame, no judgment. You have already done more than anyone could ask." No one moved. No one even looked toward the escape pods. They stood at their stations, ready to fight until the end. His voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Commander, I have an idea. It is insane and it will probably kill us all, but it might take a few more of those alien ships with us." "Tell me." "The reactor is already running hot. If I remove the safety systems and channel all remaining power into a focused electromagnetic pulse, we can overload every electronic system on any ship close to us. The pulse might even breach their hulls if they are near enough. And our ship will be at the center of the explosion. There is no way we survive it." Daniel was silent for a moment. He thought about his crew, about the lives they still had ahead of them. He thought about the colonists below, the children who would grow up because of what happened here today. Then he smiled, a genuine smile that reached his tired eyes. Make the preparations. We are going to give these something to remember." Throughout the ship, the surviving crew members began their final tasks. They did not cry or complain. They simply did their jobs because that was what sailors did. And in the engine room began the process of turning the Relentless into a weapon that would burn across the stars. The commander had finally lost his patience. For hours, his fleet had fought against a single human ship, a primitive vessel built with technology centuries behind his own, a crew of less than 50 creatures that should have been dead in the first minute of combat. And yet 3 of his warships were destroyed, their crews killed by enemies that had no right to still exist. Enough was enough. He ordered his entire remaining fleet to converge on the Relentless and destroy it completely. 9 alien warships formed a closing sphere around the battered human vessel, their weapons charged with enough power to vaporize a small moon. There would be no more games, no more amusement, only total destruction. On the bridge of the Relentless, Daniel watched them come on the flickering. The alien ships moved with deadly grace, surrounding his vessel like wolves circling wounded prey. There was no escape, no clever maneuver that could save them now. But escape had never been the plan. Daniel said into the intercom, "What is the status of that pulse?" "Ready on your command, Commander. Once I start the process, we have about 30 seconds before she blows." "Understood." Daniel pressed the button for the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the commander. In about 2 minutes, we are going to do something that has never been done before. We are going to prove to an alien civilization that humanity is not to be underestimated." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. Maria stood at her station, steady despite her wounds. Lisa kept working her console, sending final messages back to Earth. Gripped the helm controls, ready to fly the ship one last time. Throughout the vessel, men and women he had served with for years waited for his words. "Some of you have been with me for decades. Others joined us more recently. But today, none of that matters. Today, we are all one crew, one ship, one people, and we will not go quietly into the night." He took a deep breath. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you. Now let us show these aliens what the Forgotten Ones can do." The fleet opened fire, and the Relentless began her final charge. She flew directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Her remaining engines pushed her forward on a collision course with the largest alien ship. There was no more evasion, no more tactics, just a straight run toward destiny. The alien weapons tore into her hull, ripping away armor plating that had protected the ship for 2 centuries. Explosions rippled through compartments where crew members had lived and worked. Bulkheads collapsed and atmosphere vented into space. One by one, the lights on the ship went dark as systems failed. But she kept coming. The commander watched from his bridge with growing alarm. The human ship was a burning wreck, barely holding together. Yet it still advanced. Its crew was dying, yet they still fought. Everything he believed about the universe, about the natural order of predator and prey, was being challenged by this one impossible vessel. "All ships destroy them now," he screamed at his fleet. But it was too late. The Relentless reached the center of the formation. Her broken hull scraped against the shields of the alien flagship, so close that the 2 ships almost touched. In the ruined engine room, placed his hand on the control that would end everything. He thought about his wife, who had died 10 years ago. He thought about the young engineers he had trained, who would carry on his knowledge to new ships. He thought about the Relentless herself, the old girl who had served humanity faithfully for so long. "Time to go out with a bang," he whispered and pressed the button. On the bridge, Daniel Hayes looked out at the alien ship filling his. He thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests he had not seen in years. He thought about the message Lisa had sent, the warning that would help humanity prepare for what was coming. He thought about 12,000 colonists who would live because his crew had refused to run. "Humanity endures," he said softly. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from the Relentless like the fury of a dying star. It washed over the fleet in an expanding sphere of pure destruction. Shields overloaded and collapsed. Electronic systems fried and went dark. Hull plating cracked and split under the impossible stress. 6 alien ships died in that instant, their crews never understanding how a primitive vessel had defeated them. The remaining 3 ships, damaged beyond immediate repair, fled the system. They jumped to faster than light speed and ran, carrying stories of what had happened at 7. They would tell their leaders about the old human ship that had fought an entire fleet and won. They would speak of Commander Daniel Hayes and his crew, who had chosen death over retreat. And the Dominion would learn to fear a species that could produce such warriors. On the surface of 7, Administrator watched the final evacuation shuttle lift off into the sky. 12,000 lives had been saved because 47 humans had refused to abandon them. As the shuttle rose toward the stars, she looked at the debris field where the Relentless had made her final stand. Scattered among the wreckage of alien warships, she could see the twisted remains of the old Earth vessel. The ship was torn apart, unrecognizable but somehow still present, still defiant. "They will build monuments to you," whispered. "They will teach our children your names, and when they come again, they will find a humanity that remembers what you did here." She was right. In the years that followed, the story of the Relentless spread across human space. Every child learned about Commander Daniel Hayes and his forgotten crew. Every military academy taught the Battle of 7 as an example of courage against impossible odds. Every ship in the fleet carried a small piece of the Relentless built into its hull, a reminder of the sacrifice that had saved humanity. When they returned with a larger fleet, they found that humanity had not been idle. New ships waited for them, built with lessons learned from the first battle. New weapons had been developed, designed to exploit the weaknesses the Relentless had discovered. And at the head of the human fleet flew a new vessel, the largest and most powerful warship ever constructed. Her name was the Indomitable. Before every battle, the captains of human ships would speak the words that had become a rallying cry across the stars. Words that remembered the forgotten crew who had taught the galaxy what humanity was capable of. "We are the forgotten ones. We do not run, we do not surrender, and we will never stop fighting." They had come to harvest a weak species. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant. The old ship and her crew had shown the universe that humans were not prey. They were warriors who would die before bowing to any enemy. Commander Daniel Hayes and the crew of the Relentless had been forgotten by their own navy, but in death, they became immortal. Their sacrifice had saved a colony, warned Earth, and inspired generations of humans who came after them. The universe had learned an important lesson at 7. Humanity endures.